welcome to the Art of Franchise Marketing. Each episode takes a deep dive into the franchise space and explores how the biggest and best brands handle national branding, franchise development, employee recruitment, and localized marketing on a daily basis. This podcast is brought to you by NetCertive, a localized digital marketing partner for franchise networks. NetCertive talks shop with franchise executives to discuss what's working, what's not, and answers the question, what else can you be doing to excel at the art of franchise marketing?
Hello, and welcome to the Art of Franchise Marketing podcast. I'm your host, Erin Martin, and this episode's brought to you by NetCertive. Today, our guest is Amy Cantwell, the VP of Marketing at Rebath Corporation, a bathroom remodeling franchise with more than 130 locations. Amy, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, I'm excited to jump in. You have such a rich experience in the marketing and agency space. And so just to kick it off, can you give our listeners a little more background on you and then your role at Rebath as well?
Sure. Background on me, 20 years in the ad agency, marketing agency space. Grew up right as social media was coming into availability to brands. So being that young millennial in the office, hey, you know what you're doing, go figure it out kind of thing. Grew into paid media, SEO, content marketing, website development, the whole shebang. Most recently working in the auto space. And then Rebath called in October of last year. And I joined them in December. And I've been there for the last 90 days, really focused on our media strategy, our marketing strategy, building up the team, and really focusing with our franchisees on what is success from a marketing perspective.
Yeah, I love that. And I love your history and experience, not in the franchise space, coming into it. I think it's such a great opportunity to have fresh eyes, do things in different ways, see things in different ways. And so I'm curious, coming into the network, what are some of the things that you see as opportunities or, oh, this is something that a lot of marketers with normal brands, I call them normal brands, but not the multi-location complexities added, that are opportunities that you could bring into franchising in general?
Yeah, one, I'll tip my hat to the franchising community is their access and usability of AI. They've been incredible, having gone to IFA and even talked to a couple other VPs and directors across the country. The acceptance and role of AI in the franchising community is huge, and I think a little bit more so than what I saw on the outside. So I'm really excited about that. Outside coming in, a few things. First-party data. There is a wealth of data that
wild amount of wealth.
Whether they've captured it or not, or know that they're sitting on it from a franchise perspective and a franchisee perspective, is incredible. And if I had my hands on that from an agency perspective, I could only imagine what we were able to do on the outside. So that's one of the things that I've been really focused on as I've come in, is understanding what data we have. A lot of our data goes back to 2019. So imagine have pre and post pandemic data. And we've gotten smarter and more focused on what kind of data and how we want to ingest it and where it needs to go and how it leads back to performance as a business, franchisee, and as a franchisor. And then how do we capitalize and utilize on that in our marketing campaigns, right? So think about a clean room, taking all that first party data, cleaning it through and I can never say that word, but removing all of the PII and layering on other third-party data or user behavior or marketing trends or creative, and how much more efficient and effective our media could be, and how to actually future-proof certain situations like macroeconomics. So when do you pull that brand lever versus that DR lever versus that lead gen lever, based on what's also happening in the macro area with things that we can't control, but we can control how we're communicating to the audience because of this wealth of data.
Yeah.
I'm really focused on right now, aside from just our marketing.
Yeah. Yeah, and that data enrichment, that's when a lot of creative idea and like easy paths of a gut you had, or it just comes to life. And I also agree. I think that's a huge opportunity where there's some brands here or there, which I think because they have the ingesting and cleaning of data a little bit more controlled and in hand, that they can get to that stage of it. But that said, like, you don't necessarily need a CDP to enrich first party data either.
You know, you don't. I leverage CDP because we work with multiple partners, right? So make sure that you have the constructs around it. So that way you're abiding by all the rules and the laws and knowing how the data is being leveraged and that it won't accidentally do something incorrect.
Yeah, the security layer with that approach is like worth it
Yes.
completely to go that route because there's a lot that comes in with that. And especially I think when you're looking at data or you're trying to be scrappy in the era of AI and using data. I know so many marketers, okay, let's pull down something and pop it into ChatGPT or Perplexity. And it's like, no, like you can still use it in some way, but you can't be putting proprietary data into an LLM, even if they say it's secure. I think that's one of the misconceptions out there is, oh, it's not, it's secure, it's not being shared, like other, it won't be pulling from, the model won't pull from what you're entering to show it to other people. And it's okay, you can still have data breaches.
Right.
Everyone says your credit card's secure until there's a data breach. And guess what? You've got that thing in the mailer that says data breach. So
Yeah,
not secure.
Yeah, I was actually just talking with our general counsel the other week about this, mirroring AI and first-party data, and we're trying to put a policy together around how can we leverage it so we don't stifle innovation. We have the precautions and the boundaries and the rules in place to forward innovation. And look, ChatGPT and all of the other AIs, just like Google and Meta ad platforms, they benefit the end company at the end, right? It is for Google, it is for Meta. They may not be sharing your data with another person who's in the LLM, but they are using it for their own benefit, and you have to remind yourself of that.
Yeah, that's a good reminder. And I love your approach. I think I just actually had Robert Mitchell, the chief AI officer at WSI, on the podcast a few weeks ago, and he was also touting you have to systematically approach this as a company. And which, of course, when you hear the word policy, it's, oh God, like nothing feels like stifled innovation when you hear the word policy. But at the same time, I think it's more than that. It's if you have the mindset of we are going to leverage AI and use it to our advantage, but in a responsible, secure way. And we're making that possible culture-wide, company-wide, not just, hey, marketing team, go pop in and see what you can do to improve your efficiencies. Like it's different mindset and approach.
Yes, exactly. And it's rolling out anything, whether you're on the sales side or you're on the product side or you're on HR and finance and accounting side. There has to be a rollout and boundaries and a process, not a shoot from the hip, although I do like to shoot from the hip sometimes, a way of doing things so everybody can benefit from it and play by the same rules.
Yeah, exactly. So for you guys, when you stepped in with Rebath, was a lot of those systems and things in place related to data where like you're living more of the marketer's dream, I think? Because a lot of people are trying to get there and are trying to figure out what do I do if I'm not in your shoes and have that more sophisticated setup. So did you have that already?
I feel like you were on my phone calls about 3 months ago. So I walked in and we have a full data warehouse team. We have
Oh, that's awesome.
all the pipes. We can slice and dice the data, and it goes across the entire business. It's not just marketing. And we're trying to pull in more data from our marketing partners as well. So that way I'll talk about that in a little bit. But I called my former boss, she was a partner, but she was my boss. And I was building a data team at the last agency. And we were looking at data warehouses and trying out a few and building out these different pipes. And it was a long haul. It is a lot of effort. And I got into Rebath and I understood what we were doing. And I called her and I was like, this is where you'll be in 5 years. They have everything. They've put the work in. This is exactly stay the course of what we've built because it's
do the hard work.
What it looks like. And so I was really thrilled to see that of like having been on the front end of trying to build an analytics and data team to now actually getting to access and leverage that data for simple reports to complex situations.
Yeah, that's a good friend because sometimes I think we just need that reminder, especially when you're looking at true transformation. That's 5-year visions like you're talking about. And it's hard to swallow that and stay a course and be into a project that's going to get you to where you need to go, but it has that type of long time frame. Like that's hard. That takes courage.
Yeah. And it's hard with your stakeholders too, who want immediacy. Okay, I've set up a data warehouse. Now where's all this cool stuff? No, then you get into visualization and then you get into validation and all of these other things. And it just helps hearing from the outside and seeing how somebody else do it.
Yeah. And you mentioned pulling in marketing data then too. So tell me more about that.
Yeah, so we get a lot of high level metrics, right? Your spend, your impressions, your clicks, and that connects into our CRMs. That way we know exactly how a lead, when they came in, where they came from, and then how they went through that journey. We're looking to get more precise, more creative, also a layer to our data as well. So that way we understand what ad went out, where, how much money, what is the time decay. Because what we're actually looking at right now is a marketing mix model. So, and is going to help us understand a little bit more about what's efficient and effective and be able to give us places to layer on those macroeconomics again. So if we go into another recession, if we have another pandemic, if something else happens, how can we pull the levers that we have control of to make sure that we don't turn off in full and then have to dig ourselves out of a hole? Or how can we lean into and capitalize and scale in a way that without that type of data, we wouldn't have that visibility to do?
Yeah, data gives you the courage you need when you know the decision's the right thing to do. When everyone else is pulling back on ad spend because there's major uncertainty or XYZ happening, that's like the biggest opportunity to capture market share. And this has been proven time and time again, but it's still so hard for people to do it because it takes a leap of faith. But when you add data, it removes the faith part.
Gives you a little bit of a net of, okay, the data tells me to. And then it's an art and science, right? So you have the science part of it through the data. And then the art is, what does the creative look like? How do we implement this? How do we scale it? How do we, all of the other things that intuitively as marketing experts, we know and have had history doing. So you have to marry the two together.
Yeah. What advice would you give other franchise marketers who have maybe a smaller pit bull of a team and a budget and a hope and a prayer and some hard work, but basically like working with some marketing partners or doing it in-house, a CRM, and are starting there? What advice would you give them, or guidance or advice?
Yeah, and first and foremost, I know Rebath has been around for a very long time. We feel and look very mighty on the outside. We are a lean machine. So we have really dedicated small teams that are doing great work with our franchisees. So my advice is really to us that I tell my team all the time, which is plan for the outcome. What is your end goal? What do you actually want to do? And work backwards from there. Make sure that CRM is accessible to everybody. So whether it's sales or accounting or production or product or marketing, make sure that you have cross collaboration of how are you going to look at that data from your own POV, because you don't want double data, right? Oh, I need this column because it's specific to sales and I need this column specific to marketing. No, align on what those are. And then build your pipes in, right? Don't do uploads, Excel files. Get out of Excel, right?
Yeah. And I love that transparency between department point as well, because I think there's often, I've fallen to this before, where you've got your own marketing or sales data that you're looking at. And then if other people don't see it, there's some hard truths in that data where you just have to face the hard truth. You got to tell the story like it is. As a leader, there's the massaging of what's possible and where you're going. And then maybe with your senior leadership team, there's a little bit more of the easy, hard truths of look at where we're at. This is it. And if you don't share that in any way, shape, or form, that you don't bring them along in the journey, that's where surprises come up, or why isn't this happening, and misunderstanding. So I think that like everyone on the same page, full transparency, get the lay of the land out in front and dashboard it is huge. There's a lot there.
And I think you hit on a good point, is involve the younger generation coming into. I think I've been very lucky having been on the agency side with some incredible agency owners throughout my career that had that transparency. So it wasn't this is your cog in the whole system. It is, look at the bigger picture. I used to, at McMurray, which is now Manifest, the former CEO, would open the books to us. Or when I was working on a project that he was the executive leader, he would give me the business case for it. So that way I could level up to, oh, it's not just a Facebook post. There's a bigger game plan behind here. And then as I grew in my agency career, I got more interested in the business side. Marketing's easy in a sense. Right. Once you've been doing it long enough, you understand how things work. It's just a matter of budget and creative and like pulling it all together. But when you have that business mindset, that makes you the marketer that you are and how good you are at it. And that really led me to opening my own winery. And from a business perspective, it led me to my husband opening his own businesses and consulting. because I wanted that understanding of how does business work, so that way when I have my marketing hat on, how can I help the end goal?
Yeah, love that. And I did not know that you were also an entrepreneur. You got like a side hustle with a winery then. You got to tell a little bit about that.
We are out of the winery business right now. But yeah, we bought a winery December 2020. I'm a huge Arizona wine fan down in southeast Arizona. And we had an opportunity to go with a couple partners and buy a winery, rehab a old vineyard and tasting room, create our own label, go through that entire process. So it was down from harvesting the grapes to driving the grapes across the state to, oh my gosh, I just lost my train of thought, to putting them in bottles, to selling them, to trying to get people attracted to the tasting room. And while I handled the marketing side, I really focused on the financial and business side of things. How do you do a wine club, right? So subscription service. How do you drive foot traffic? How do you build partnerships that you can leverage from a visibility perspective?
That is so cool. Is there any big learnings from that experience then that you'll always take with you and remember?
Yes, I learned how to raise money.
Oh, yeah, that's a new one.
Right. I learned how to partner with partners who have different visions, right? So it's not even just like red or blue on the label, but a matter of how are we going to actually spend and allocate our dollars. And that's really where I learned to focus on finances and making sure that I understand what our runway is or what is good leverage versus bad leverage and things like that.
Yeah. And I think that's a huge, like if I had to go back and tell my younger self something about marketing in general too, it is like you have to understand it in the outcomes and how it's tied to business perspective. Again, like that larger vision that you're helping paint for your team or someone's done for you in the past so that you do understand the mechanics, because otherwise you end up doing kind of the wrong thing. Oh, we got a bunch of impressions and it's cool. That can't be it. So continue. You got to put together that picture and really understand it. And there's nothing like getting your hands dirty to truly understand it.
Right. And think about the influencer industry and how it's come up. Before it was a cool thing to do, right? It was the trend. Find an influencer, throw some money at them, and hopefully they post about your product in the way that they want. And now it's an actual business, and you can validate the creative. I used influencers for an automotive dealer that I worked with to test creative and messaging, right? So think about that third row back seat, right? Most dads may or may not care about it, but moms do. So when you partner with mom influencers who can give you the details around that third row back seat and how it benefits them and how it makes their life more efficient and effective, it actually makes your ad creative much better when you're up on the Super Bowl or you're doing that national campaign, because you're talking to both audiences.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's the first, I think, example that I've heard of using influencers for testing, which is so true. And a good reminder that testing is everywhere. And it should be layered into everything we do. It shouldn't be just thought of as this one thing that we're doing over here. It's no, we're always innovating. We're always testing on every channel, different approaches. Not too much. You want to be able to understand what's working or not, but the pockets are everywhere.
Yeah. And we ultimately learned picking up that influencer creative and putting our money behind it as an ad, and then putting in our brand creative after a 7-day period, 14-day period, actually helped conversion at a higher dollar value and at a faster turnaround time. So that was, you prime them and then you direct response them.
Yeah, love that. And related to the influencer side or just more brand and creative side of things, do you guys have anything going right now for Rebath or some previous campaigns and experiences that you can share on the branding side of things that's worked well?
Yeah, so we launched in the last year Every Step of the Way campaign, which is really to help the process, right? So Rebath is there with you literally every step of the way. We pull up with our showroom, you can experience what your new bathroom is going to look like in your home. You can actually understand how it looks in that context. And then we also partnered with Jenny and Dave from Fixer to Fabulous. So that's our big national campaign right now, which is perfect because she's helping us build some additional designs that are custom and only available within the Rebath system. And it's giving us exposure on Fixer to Fabulous. We had 3 commercials this season. We have one more coming up in about a week. And it's just been a really good partnership to get us exposure to other audiences and to also showcase the process and system that Rebath has with our local franchisees. Seeing just a normal ad creative you really wouldn't get that experience unless it was a full ecosystem of that campaign.
Yeah. And that's something I think you guys have historically done really well, a lot of those national campaigns. And I might botch this, but did you guys have, or do you currently have also a partnership with Lowe's as well?
So we have national accounts, Home Depot and Lowe's.
Okay, yeah. So many. So like you guys have done a ton on the partnership front. Like what's your guys' process and approach to that? Are you just using NAF and then you get creative kind of every year on what you can be doing? Like how do you guys manage that program?
National accounts doesn't follow in my purview, but it can definitely connect us with Paula or Abby who in Maryland who manage that. But from a marketing perspective, we sometimes partner together, but it's a national accounts to service Lowe's and Home Depot.
Yeah, okay. Nice. Yeah, those are awesome. And it's always interesting when you get franchise brands with smaller budgets at the local level. It's, oh man, if you could even carve off and pool some of that money into brand awareness, like brand awareness means sales. That's the educational point we always have to win when it comes to many of the educational marketing lessons with stakeholders sometimes, but you have to be aware of your brand before someone will buy. And if you can pool some of the media funds for brand awareness efforts that still is driving visibility and local traffic, that's rich.
And that's where having that centralized data component is, right? That CRM, you can manually go back and look at it. So co-op is great for that. If you don't have the funds for it as an individual franchisee, find other franchisees in your area to co-op together to build that brand awareness. It's a little longer term. I was just talking to Nielsen yesterday on a model, and they were telling me that brand awareness actually has a 2-year runway on average. So that ad that you see from a brand awareness may not convert in the next 14, 30 or whatever your runway is, but in a year or two, it actually pays off much more than an immediate lead gen.
Yeah. Also putting into consideration sales cycle too on top of it. So
exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But if a small franchisee needs to bootstrap something, look at how your organic or non-brand versus brand keywords fluctuate when your campaigns are on and which campaigns are on or off, right? Or what type of direct traffic is happening or what's happening on your social pages. Like those are all diagnostic indicators of how it's being perceived and how your audience is actually leveraging that brand awareness versus another type of campaign funnel.
Yeah, yep. And I think also that's where micro influencers can play a good opportunity for brand awareness in a local market too.
Yeah.
They're obviously not saying, hey, here's our sales card.
Yeah.
They're getting in your feed with entertaining content or whatever it can be. And I was actually just talking to a marketer where they do a trade program. So there's no hard costs and they'll just trade, hey, like you can come in and use our products and services complimentary. Then you post about it. And so you can set things up that's mutually beneficial. That's
really great for the micro influencer. I've got a few here in Phoenix that do something similar to that. And there's a place for it, right? There's a place for the Kim Kardashians and the other pieces. But if you're really trying to drive revenue, and I learned this with a supplement company, 10 years ago, where we partnered with Odell Beckham Jr., John Jay and Rich John Jay from John Jay and Rich, and a fitness influencer, Ben Greenfield, who is really into understanding how the body works and how to train the body and supplement the body. I love OBJ, and his agent was great, but he didn't drive the revenue. He gave us the exposure, and he was wonderful, and it was nice to help give that high level. But the revenue attributed came from the other influencers who had that smaller audience that was dedicated, super loyal, and was like, how can I be like you? And so therefore, I'm going to do the same things that you do.
Yeah. And more relatable.
Yes.
When you're not like Kim Kardashian and me, there's a little bit of a difference. But if I see someone in Denver, Colorado like me, way more relatable.
Yeah. There's actually a Denver, Colorado influencer that I worked with on the auto space. He's an amputee and was doing ultra marathons. And we ended up giving him a vehicle to use in his promotions. And it was some of the best performing that we've had.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
Yeah.
I definitely don't want to miss out on asking you the question that I ask everyone related to what's your favorite tips and tricks of using AI right now? If you've heard of anything or seen anything, I know that you also talked about the systematic approach that's needed, but there's always some fun hacks or tools popping up that I'm hearing from people. Are you seeing or doing anything on your end?
Yeah, nothing special that anybody hasn't already said. So the typical questioning, edit this, grammar this. But what I actually have been exploring is specific chat GPT. So I was just on Thomas Eccles out of the UK, who's a PPC expert. I was messing around with his chat GPT chat yesterday. There's a couple other ones in the marketing space that I'm just diving into to understand how did they train it? How is it different than a typical GPT? And then how can I start to bring that in? I really want to focus on the LMM one that has the podcast that we learned about at IFA and use that internally. So that way, when I send out my normal updates to the team, it's not just reading, they're hearing a voice, and it's a kind of a fun interactive piece.
Yeah, that's cool. And related to that, I do think there are a ton of experts in the space that are moving the needle related to AI and how to best use it. So it's like we don't have to necessarily be the ones reinventing every single wheel here. There's people doing some cool things, and you have to find them and explore and understand what they're doing as everything progresses so quickly. But I think that's a great example of go find the information or follow the podcast that sharing some of the latest ways of using tools to get to what you need. Don't do it yourself.
Yeah. There's no reason to start from scratch. Build off of somebody else for your own personal needs. And that way you don't have to spend the hours, like leverage somebody else's work, give them the credit, but leverage it. Why start from scratch for everything?
Yeah. And how do you think about or go about coaching your team when it comes to AI too? I'm curious because it's something I've been thinking about a ton, especially growing up without these types of tools as a marketer. And then I put myself in some of my team members' shoes and I'm like, holy crap, this is like a whole different world where you have a career just starting off and there's all these types of tools that are out here. So like, how do I coach them to be able to think about and use these in their own personal and career paths correctly? It's just a lot. It's a lot of, as a manager, to get your arms around how your company and team should be using it for advantages, but then how do you coach team members too? So I'm just curious, what's your philosophy, your thought on that?
Yeah, and that's a really great topic that we could probably step into is leadership and management, right? Especially in the agency marketing space. From an AI perspective, I think back to like when social media, Facebook came and you had to have the .edu email and then what it's blown up into. And I take those learnings and say, okay, test and learn and try, but understand what it actually means, right? So your data isn't truly private, right? It's being still collected and housed somewhere. Don't use it to just write a blog post, right? Think about the blog post because AI isn't thinking the way that you are, right? It can help give you the information. It can help you structure. It can help you give additional value. But at the end of the day, we're still humans and we're connecting with humans. So you have to make sure that you have that human foundation to it. Right now, we don't allow blog posts that are AI written at the moment, maybe down the road, but I'm fine from a topic perspective, but not to actually be the full work.
Yeah, I love that. And that's one thing I think too, when it comes to writing, like for me specifically growing up and starting to write, I had to write for a long time. And I'm still not a great writer, but at least I'm comfortable and can do it. But it takes a lot of practice. And if you have a crutch where you're removing the practice of that human actually writing, like you lose all those reps.
Yeah.
So it can be scary. Don't shortchange yourself by not doing the hard work. There's still some things that you need to do as a marketer. That's the hard work that you shouldn't cut so that you can get to where you want to go later on in your career.
Cutting corners doesn't work for anybody in the long run. And for me, I write like I speak. And so I've learned throughout my career, when you're young, you're using all the language and the vernacular, and I can see how it can help us simplify it into a more human form to somebody who's not in it. And then as I've elevated, I'm actually using it more for how can I not just simplify, but elevate the language and structure it a little bit differently. Like here are the top 3 points that you need to know, and then here's all the details down below from an email. So it's helping me from a structure standpoint.
Yeah, yep. And then for general leadership and management, is there any advice you'd have for some of the rising marketing leaders from your experience in terms of advice when they're trying to step into true marketing leader roles?
Yeah, go the extra step, right? You're asked to do something, you're asked a question, go the extra step of closing the loop. So if it's franchisee is asking about this, don't just answer the question. Put it in an email as if you were going to write it to the franchisee and give that context. And the other one that I've really found with the younger generation is having candid conversations and direct conversations doesn't mean we're being mean. Learn the skill of directness with candor, but humanity and kindness. And that goes really far. Amy Harris from Primrose and I used to take classes together on leadership a lot because we were just into it. I've done Morning Brew and a couple other things. And that has helped me communicate with executives and clients and franchisees more effectively than trying to tiptoe around or not be direct, but with kindness.
Yeah. And what's Morning Brew? I haven't heard of that.
Morning Brew? Oh my goodness. So Morning Brew is a newsletter that started about 10 years ago. I think they're out of one of the Ivy League schools, but they created a whole education thing for leadership. So there's the financial course, there's a leadership course, there's a communication course, and it just really gave you exposure to a full network of people outside of marketing, all trying to understand the same thing of business impacts.
Yeah, that's good. And it's a good reminder there's resources out there to give you the tools to be able to do this better. You don't have to go on a hope and a prayer of, I'm going to be better at communication. There's actual tools out there.
The best one that I've read, and I made my team at the last agency read this, Radical Candor by Kim Scott. Fantastic book. She's got tons of resources online that you can leverage with your team. And it just creates that safe space to have open and direct conversations, whether there's conflict or not, how to resolve it and communicate through it.
Yeah, there's this one book, I'm completely blanking on it. I'm like, oh, is it over there? I need to remind myself. But it was one of the best reads because it was basically how to have hard conversations. Yeah. Maybe that's the title of it. I'm completely blanking. I'll have to look it up after.
Sounds familiar, yeah.
It's literally was a game changer for me on business and personal side of things because it gives you the psychological what's happening with every human, because every interaction is a human interaction. So you have to know that there's a lot of emotions at play, not just logic.
Yeah.
And then it basically outlines, here's how you have to structure hard conversations. And it just gives you the playbook for success. And it was crazy because I did it in multiple arenas, like I said, throughout my personal and business life. And it worked great. And it was all because there's a playbook, structure, and tools to be able to have them, which to cut to the chase, it was basically you need to establish what our shared goals are, despite our differences. And that has to be established first and foremost before you can have any type of hard conversation. And then from there, you peel back the onion and dig into it. But you have a shared goal that's your guys' anchor to anything hard from there, basically.
And then it takes the emotion out, right? It takes the emotion and the personal, and they'll always be there, and emotions are good. But now it's not personal. It's all about, okay, how can we come to that shared goal? And how do we communicate our way through it? And I think the same thing can be happening for marketing. One of the things that I loved is when carousels came available on Instagram and leveraging that and seeing some of the brands who actually leverage that in a way. So I'll give you an example. Think about parent guilt, right? You're traveling and you're away from your kids. You're doing the 9 to 5 and they're spending 10 hours at school. And I think August is Parents Week or Parents Month. I should know this. But there was a campaign about swiping away parent guilt. And so leveraging the carousel, and so every time you swiped is the removal of certain types of guilt of being away. Your kids are still being cared for by great teachers. By traveling, your kids get to see the world through your eyes. And that physical emotion and activity towards the message. And I wish brand marketers did more of that. Yeah. Then that human connection becomes really real, and it's less about the ad message and the convincing of you to do something, and more about let's just take this moment and be human and connect with you.
I love that example. That's going to be one of my most favorite examples now too, especially because of the addicting swipe fun. There's the tactile piece of it mixed with the emotional.
Yeah.
So it's almost, that's a great, I think, advice for the beginning of a playbook when you do creative ad campaigns and approaches. It's okay. What's our differentiator? How do we want people to feel with our product or service? And how do we get that to come to life through a video, carousel, the medium basically that you're playing with, bridging that art and science. But again, it's because of that emotion that you want to evoke.
Exactly. And I think that'll also help you from a stakeholder perspective get into testing. Hey, I need a new creative format that's not in our standard folder. But here's why, because I think it will help bridge that human connection in this way. Can we test it and see what it does? It helps you give you that leverage as well. And I think we need to step back and think about that more often than just having our standard creative assets and folder and just saying, good luck.
So true. I see a lot of creative. And I would say there's a lot that is very literal sauce. I use the word literal sauce as, yes, this is literally what you do. Yeah. I fall trap to this as a marketer too. I'll look at things and I'm like, oh, I just literally said what we do. That's not that helpful.
We're human, right? We still consume the same way. We might know the literal secret sauce that happens, but we're still consumers and humans at the end of the day.
Yeah, exactly. I know we're coming up on time, but I do want to ask, is there anything that you wish I would have touched on or asked you that I didn't?
Oh my. No, I think we covered a very wide breadth of topics. And I feel like we could do this for 2 more hours.
I know. I think another episode with you will be due later on down the line. We can catch up on how everything's been going at Rebath. And thank you so much for the time. This was an awesome convo, and we can't wait to have you on later. And thanks to all listeners who chimed in today.
Thanks for listening to The Art of Franchise Marketing. This show is brought to you by NetCertive. We help franchise brands and multi-location businesses run localized digital marketing at scale. To learn more, visit netcertive.com.